I, Dishma Grace from Radio Express, present before you another sensitive yet a powerful and ongoing issue with the Pravasis, with special focus on women. Today, again, we have our much eminent guest with us, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, the Principal Advisor to the Government of India. So here I welcome the most outstanding civil servant India has ever seen. Today, we surely will be addressing the notional as well as the empirical questions related to the issue of non-resident Indians, that is, the Pravasis, with a special focus on women. It is estimated that there are 1.75 crore of non-resident Indians living and working in various countries of the world, especially in the GCC countries. In addition, there is a population of 1.8 crore of people of Indian origin residing in various countries of the world. These Indian diaspora, collectively known as Pravasis, have been domestic victims of the uncertainties of COVID-19 in their respective countries. They were under great stress and strain when the government of India stepped in. Well, moving on. Here I have my first question. The Indian diaspora in GCC countries are quite thankful to you for the help you have done to have the NEET examinations postponed. It was quite significant in media, irrespective of the party affiliation. Thank you for being a friend in need for the Pravasis. What is your side of story on this?
May I make it clear at the outset? I am not a decision maker in government. The decision to respond favorably to the request of the Pravasis was taken by the competent authorities in government. My role is confined to that of a postman. I try to convey to the competent authorities the emotional intensity of the situation. Especially, I could gather from the mothers of the students in the GCC countries how vexed they were if their children were to come to India and to take the NEET examination against heavy odds. Flights are not adequate. They have to undergo quarantine in India and also in the respective GCC country when they return. And the financial implications are also pretty high. Moreover, the Pravasis who toil hard to sustain the economy of this country would feel terribly let down if the nation does not come for their support in an hour of need. I'm very glad that we have a very sensitive government in India now. That is why, beyond rules and regulations, government could take a humane view in the matter and decide to postpone the NEET examination, much to the great relief of the mothers of GCC. I would consider this as our thanksgiving to the mothers. Of course, the Chief Minister of Kerala, Sri Pinarayi Vijayan, the MPs, then our Minister at the Centre, Sri Muralidharan, and our ebullient MP, Sri Alphonse Kannanthanam, and a whole host of others took interest in supporting the demands, the legitimate demands of the Pravasis of the GCC countries.
That was quite thoughtful, sir. You have been benign enough to attribute the entire credit to the mothers. Do you think our mothers get the deserved treatment in society, particularly from the civil society and the new generation?
I am of the firm conviction that if India is what it is today, an economic superpower, a cultural superpower, and if the Indians are honored in the other countries, it is because the mothers of India raised their children well. We do not learn anything in our life more than what we have learned from the mothers. It is a mother who creates the right attitude in every human being and also teaches him the importance of values. We can acquire knowledge and skills as we proceed in our life, but the attitudes are formulated by the mother. The second part of your question, are we fair to the mothers? A big no is the answer. We saw in the COVID lockdown days, this nation was run by the housewives. It was virtually the kitchen cabinet which sustained the country during lockdown. But are we fair to the mothers? There are distressing spectacles of distrusting children sending their mothers to the old age homes when they are no more useful in the household. This is a pernicious tendency which has to be curbed with an iron hand. Even if legislation is required, that should certainly be put in place. The mother is a symbol of social cohesion. The mother is a repository of affection, love, kindness, and empathy. We should certainly have a relook into our approach to mothers. Unfortunately, in our exposure to the Western culture, we have let the sources of our own native culture dry up. This should not happen. There should be a reversal. And there should be strong legislation against domestic violence and mental harassment. Of course, there are some legislation, some laws are there in the country, but the laws should be implemented effectively. We should cease to be a soft state which goes slow and tardy in the implementation of existing legislation.
Thank you for those pretty concerned statements, sir. Moving on. India is a country where women are honored. We have instances of Rani Lakshmibai, Ahilyabai Holkar, and the democratic leaders like Indira Gandhi. And then how can you say the women are not having their due place in the society?
Well, one swallow does not make a summer. Flaunting the instances of certain great women in politics or in places of power, we cannot generalize that Indian women are safe and secure. No. Our scriptures teach us, Yatra nairyastu pujyanti, ramante tatra devata. Where women are honored, there the gods rejoice. These are all inspiring concepts. But in practice, we have lowered it to the level of mere platitudes. No nation, no society can survive on platitudes alone. What we need is action, not an alibi for inaction. Women find themselves second-class citizens in the nation, in society, in home. Now, amniocentesis to determine the fetus, the sex of the fetus is banned. But in 1 year, of the 8,000 abortions that were carried out in Mumbai, all except one was that of the female fetus. In Telugu, there is a saying, rearing a girl child is like watering the plant in the neighbor's garden. Even within the home, when food is to be shared between the son and the daughter, always the son gets priority. The daughter is expected to slog for everyone in the home, whereas the little prince, the young man, is groomed up by even the mothers as a little tyrant in future. Our attitude towards women has to change. Women are not only equal, they are more equal. The kind of soothing touch, emotional tranquility, which a housewife, a mother, can afford is something which is unparalleled, that cannot be monetized. If it is monetized, it is going to be a whopping figure which the masculine tyrants will not be able to afford. 3 cheers to the women of India.
Well, as said, 3 cheers to women of India. You said about legislative measures to curb the tendency of abandoning or rejecting or the ignoring mothers when they are old. Can you spell out what you have in your mind?
Every mother, every woman for that matter, every housewife, whether they are working women or women workers, spend most of the time near the hearth and the home. It is said every man's home is his castle. But for many housewives and mothers, it's not a castle, it's a jail. Domestic violence is on the increase. Ingratitude of the children are glaring in many households. And then comes this benumbing tendency of throwing your mother out of the house when she's old. Now the question, what legislative measures? You fix a notional wage for the mother and also for the father. A woman works at least 12 to 15 hours a day in the house. Even if you fix a notional wage of 50 rupees per hour, how much she will be earning a day? And how much she will be earning a year? How much will it be accumulating when she is old? This is notional. The children don't have to pay back to her. She's not going to demand it. But if she is rejected in old age, if she is abandoned, if she is sent to the concentration camp, euphemistically called the old age home, then this notional wage has to be recovered and given to her. Choice is there for the children. Do you want to throw out your mother? Do it by all means. But she has a right over the notional wages she has earned. Give it her. Otherwise, she is not demanding anything from you.
Thank you so much for the logical arguments over there. Coming back to the Pravasis, the mothers still have a deep felt grievance, and now that they request for the centers in the Gulf countries for NEET, if not considered favorably, how do you propose to help them?
As I said, I have a small role to play in this, a very small role. That I will perform to the best of my ability. Maybe like the widow's mite in the Bible, or like the role of the squirrel in the Ramayana. I will certainly try to find an answer or a solution to the problems raised by the mothers of the GCC countries. It is still open to the government to start NEET centers in the GCC countries. The door is not closed. Or as Helen Keller says, if a window is closed before you, God will open 10 doors in that place. Please check the quotation. We will keep mounting moral pressures on the decision makers. I understand that the authority, as far as the NEET exam is concerned, is the Indian Medical Council, which is an autonomous regulator. So they have to be convinced about it. But there are also human beings who can understand the feelings of others. Then there is the government. I am sure that a favorable decision could be taken in this matter as well. As far as the other issues of the Pravasis are concerned, the major problem is the loss of job for many of them. They will return to India, and quite a lot of them to Kerala. I see a silver lining in this dark cloud also. Most of the Pravasis who return to India carry with them a great treasure of experience of working in multicultural, multilingual, multinational context. This is a unique experience which the global investors are looking forward to. Now, there is the imminent possibility of many investors in China seeking to relocate to other countries. And with the salubrious investment climate created by the policies of the Prime Minister, which is reflected in the Make in India program and similar moves, India can be a favorite destination for those industries who seek relocation from China. This rich army of trained personnel who return from the GCC countries and other Pravasis could be a great attraction to the companies to relocate in places like Kerala. Then, there is an attempt to provide a viable roadmap on the rehabilitation of the Pravasis. Of course, governments are doing their bit. Civil society is also free to do its bit. From my humble level, a report has been formulated for submission to the Government of India and the state governments. Some of the features of that report is for the Pravasis, Pravasi rehabilitation. Number one, a national social security board to take care of the assured basic income, pension, health care, and related welfare measures and social security measures for the returning Pravasis. Number two, many of the Pravasis will have the capability and the willingness to invest in fruitful ventures. There should be a special purpose vehicle for this purpose, where small investors can come together and start viable enterprises. Three, those who come to Kerala in particular have a fear, a genuine one at that if they invest in the state, they will have to come to grief. Governments may provide special economic zones where the restrictive practices which impede industrialization of the state are kept off, at least for a few years. Next, skilling, reskilling, and multi-skilling, training, retraining, and multi-training can transform the returning Pravasis into excellent professionals who will be able to fill up the critical gaps in the world market. Next, The panchayats should take up the responsibility of providing facilitation to the returning Pravasis. There can be panchayat level professional service agencies run, operated, owned and operated by the Pravasis. Next, for the Pravasi women, special self-help groups could be set up. The extended credit limit of 20 lakhs, which is announced in the stimulus package of the Government of India, along with the packages offered by the NORCA and other agencies of the Government of Kerala, could be dovetailed to turn homemakers into nation builders. There are 40 points like this in the roadmap for post-COVID rehabilitation of the Pravasis who return to India, to Kerala.
Well, hopefully, this small role of yours will support the good deeds over here. Moving on to our last question. Your deference for the mothers is really touching. But in a family, father is also equally important. What is your comment on this?
Yes, the mother and father are like two hemispheres. It is the two hemispheres together which constitute the sphere. The father certainly has his revered, respectful position within the family. He is a protector. Mother is a creator and a preserver. See, in the Trinity also, there is a God who is the creator, another God who is the preserver, a third God who is the protector. In the mother, the creator and the preserver are both combined. Well, the father is the protector. There is no denying that fact. But why the mother is important? Mother is distinct. The mother can sacrifice her body and soul for the child. The mother finds pleasure in suffering pain if it is for the child. There is this tale of an old woman. She is poor. She works as domestic servant in many houses to eke out a living. Her son is in the school. Every afternoon, the mother will bring lunch to feed her son in the school. She has only one eye. The bullies in the school will start taunting the boy, son of the one-eyed mother, son of the one-eyed mother. The boy was insulted. He hated his mother. He grew up, got a job, got married, shifted to the city. No touch with the mother. One day he saw the mother comes to his house and starts fondling his child. He grew wild and threw out his mother, shouting, "You are bent to destroy me. Won't you give me peace even here?" The mother left the place. After a few months, this young man went to the school for the reunion. When he came back, his mother's neighbor gave an envelope to him and said, "Your mother is no more. But before her death, she gave me this envelope containing a letter, asked me to deliver it to you because she knew you would come for the reunion of the school, though you won't come to see her. Here is a letter. The young man read the letter. My dearest darling, I love you dearly, dearly. I love your wife, I love your child. You are my world. I wanted to tell you something. I know you hated me because others taunted you, calling me the one-eyed woman. You know how I became one-eyed? When you were a boy of 6, there was a car accident in which you lost your eye. In the school, they used to taunt you, one-eyed, one-eyed, one-eyed. I couldn't bear that. So, I gave my eye so that the doctor could transplant it to you. That is my dearest, dearest darling. Your mother became one-eyed. That is the mother. The mother can find pleasure in the pain, even if it is inflicted on her by the child. 3 cheers to the mothers of the world.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing these sensitive viewpoints at a public platform. We are indeed grateful to you for this. So here we come to an end to a second episode of Yes Pose. We will be soon back with a new topic with new enthusiasm on a new day. Till then, stay safe and take care. Signing off, Dishma Grace.
Radio Express.
To receive Radio Express English news and English programs in your WhatsApp, please send a WhatsApp message English programs to 90727 95547 and please subscribe to our YouTube channel Radio Express. Thank you.